I loved the original SpongeBob movie. It was an amazing movie that delivered above and beyond my expectations. Heck, even years after its release, I still find it funny, creative, and all around a good time. So, as you can imagine, I was actually hyped to hear that a new SpongeBob movie was being made. But after seeing it, I feel a bit conflicted. I don't think I could classify this movie as being a good or bad movie as a whole, but rather, I'd like to call this movie a perfect example. A perfect example of what, you might ask? Well, sit back and let me tell you the tale of SpongeBob, Sponge Out of Water. The movie opens up like any other episode of SpongeBob. We see SpongeBob and Patrick casually chatting outside the Krusty Krab, just before Plankton comes flying in to nuke the Krusty Krab with tartar sauce, which causes a literal war to break out in good old SpongeBob fashion. What I like about this opening is that it's very much a contrast to the opening of the original SpongeBob movie, and it fits the theme of the story very well. In the first movie, the opening makes it very obvious that it's not just another day in the life of SpongeBob. It shows us that it was a special occasion, which fits the theme of SpongeBob and Patrick going on an adventure unlike anything they had been on before. This movie opening works well as it starts off as just another ordinary day in SpongeBob's life, only for something to happen that completely changes SpongeBob's world. But I'm getting ahead of myself. As it turns out, that whole war segment was just a distraction so that Plankton could sneak into the Krusty Krab vault without being noticed. One thing he didn't count on, though, was SpongeBob's bad timing. The Krusty Krab goes on lockdown and SpongeBob and Plankton fight over the formula, just before it vanishes from their hands. They both try telling Mr. Krabs what happened, but he doesn't buy the story from either of them. Plankton escapes and Mr. Krabs decides to deal with it later, as the lunch rush has kicked in. However, it turns out that they have ran out of Krabby Patties, so Mr. Krabs forms an angry mob to capture Plankton and essentially start a public execution, which leads Mr. Krabs to saying what might be the most savage line in SpongeBob.
I told you, Krabs, I don't have it. Wrong answer.
SpongeBob helps Plankton escape in a giant bubble, and both of them fly off as the citizens of Bikini Bottom decide how to best handle the situation.
Welcome to the apocalypse, Mr. Squidward.
I just love this entire setup. The designs of the characters and the world is just fantastic, and the destruction and chaos is very creative. You can just tell they had a lot of fun working with this scenario and they wanted to use it to its fullest. SpongeBob and Plankton watch Bikini Bottom turn into a post-apocalyptic wasteland and decided they are going to need more people on their side. SpongeBob's first thought is to recruit his best and most loyal companion, Patrick.
Loyalty. Isn't that right, Patrick?
Yeah, loyalty. I've got SpongeBob!
Who just flat out betrays SpongeBob and tries to get him captured. They manage to escape, and SpongeBob decides the next person they should recruit is Sandy. But as it turns out, the whole apocalypse thing really hit her hard. From the pressure of an ever-collapsing society and a giant piece of paper with the words, "The End," having fallen on her dome, Sandy has been driven mad and rather unstable. Finally, SpongeBob decides to recruit his most loyal companion and best buddy, Gary, who has become the king of snails and will no longer listen to SpongeBob's orders. So, yeah. SpongeBob is fighting a very one-sided battle since everyone he knows has either turned against him or had gone crazy. With no options left and no idea where the Krabby Patty formula is, Plankton decides their best bet is to create a time machine and go back in time to get the secret formula before it disappeared. I have a lot to say about the time travel aspect of this movie, but we'll get to that later. For now, we cut to SpongeBob and Plankton breaking into the chum bucket in order to get Karen for her time machine. After some comedic slapstick with the Patrick guard, they free Karen and take her to a really weird location to build a time machine. But after a musical montage, the team finishes the time machine and celebrates their success with a short song. Now, SpongeBob is known as a very musically heavy show. A lot of its episodes have a musical segment in them, and even the first SpongeBob movie broke out into a song a few times. But this movie seems to be lacking in that department. There's only one song that is sung in this entire movie, and it's not even that good. And while a whole lot of people may like the songs being cut to a minimum, I feel as though the movie could have used a few creative songs. You have such a fun and creative environment, and yet it's never used for any musical potential. Looking back at the first SpongeBob movie with the song "Now That We're Men," which had SpongeBob and Patrick obliviously trekking through a monster-filled chasm, it used its environment well for its visual storytelling as the song focused on how oblivious SpongeBob and Patrick was to the danger. What could have been a boring and tedious scene was made fun and lively thanks to that song. I just feel that we could have used more songs like that with the setup of this apocalyptic Bikini Bottom. Anyways, SpongeBob and Plankton set out in the time machine and arrive just 4 days into the future where Bikini Bottom has turned into a literal wasteland. SpongeBob and Plankton get freaked out and flee in the time machine. Their next destination is a place beyond time and space, where they meet a mystical guardian of the universe called Bubbles. Now, this is an interesting setup. You have now introduced a godlike being into the SpongeBob universe, so now we can establish his character, learn about his origins, and even see how his mere existence affects the plot.
And I could really do with a potty break.
Or we could just have him go to the bathroom, as SpongeBob and Plankton screw up and then have to leave in the time machine. Yeah, no, that's not a waste of an incredibly interesting character at all. And finally, after that very much needed side plot, SpongeBob and Plankton finally make it back in time to steal the formula and return back to Bikini Bottom. And that's it for the time machine plot. Yes, we introduced this fascinating concept into the movie only to have it over within literally 6 minutes. It would have been cool if time travel played a much bigger role in the movie, like, what if the reason the Krabby Patty formula disappeared in the first place was because of a paradox effect from SpongeBob and Plankton going back in time just to steal it? So in every other timeline, it just disappears? That would have been a much more interesting plot twist. Or what about Bubbles? Why couldn't we have more of the time travel story focus on him? It's just sad that they bring up these fun ideas, but none of them ever get fully realized. Anyways, SpongeBob and Plankton return to the Krusty Krab and their timeline with the secret formula in hand. Everyone cheers for them and seems like the post-apocalypse is almost over. At least, it would have been if they grabbed the right bottle. No, instead the bottle they grabbed was the one with a rather crude message to Mr. Krabs. Plankton and SpongeBob get into a fight about whose fault it was, and in the end, SpongeBob decides that in order to save everybody else in Bikini Bottom, he would sacrifice himself in order to appease the sandwich gods. Oh yeah, forgot to mention that was a thing. Also, at this point in the movie, it's kind of worrying that the people of Bikini Bottom's only way of solving an issue is if they have a public execution. But alas, the SpongeBob movie ends on a rather dark note. SpongeBob gets flattened by a stone sandwich. The sandwich gods are not appeased, and everyone in Bikini Bottom starves to death, and as the sands of time cover the town, with SpongeBob and Plankton arriving only to witness what had happened, but not realizing what had caused it, showing us the unending cycle of their time travel has caused, a cycle that always ends in misery. And that is the end of SpongeBob, Sponge Out of Water. Be sure to like and subscribe to help. Ugh, fine. All throughout this movie, I might have missed a teeny tiny itty bitty part of this movie. The live action segments. Now, earlier I said that this movie was a perfect example, and what I meant by that was that this movie is a perfect example of creator versus corporation. This isn't a new concept, and it's one that's been going on for years. When a creator makes a show for a company, they have to follow a set guideline for making the show. There are rules that they have to follow in order for it to be approved, and on top of that, the higher-ups of these companies can even make demands of certain additions and changes to be made in the show. This happens all the time, and in a recent example would be the addition of Chloe in The Fairly OddParents. You can tell that she was forced in by the higher-ups at Nickelodeon even before Butch Hartman admitted it on his YouTube channel. Now this movie is by far the most perfect example of this, because you can tell the creative separation of this movie. Half of this movie feels like an honest attempt to tell a fun SpongeBob story, and the other half feels like it's trying to cash in on the success of Alvin and the Chipmunk movies, as well as the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Seriously, it feels like in the boardroom meeting for this movie, that two company directors fought it out whether this movie should cash in on the live-action remakes or cash in on the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And in the end, they just decided to do both. And thanks to that, we have to endure the last 20 minutes of this movie. But before then, let's cut back to the actual beginning of this movie. Now, this movie starts out okay enough. A mysterious pirate is searching for a treasure on a deserted island, which feels like a callback to the opening of the original SpongeBob movie. The mysterious pirate's name is Burger Beard, and the treasure he was looking for was a storybook that tells the tale of SpongeBob. Now, what makes the live-action segments even more terrible is the villain's plan. Burger Beard stole the storybooks so that he could write it in, so that he gets the Krabby Patty secret formula. And no, they never explain how that was possible. So just Burger Beard can make Krabby Patties and become the best food truck owner in the world. Yep, that's our villain. Do you remember in the first movie how Plankton stole God's crown and blamed it on Mr. Krabs in the hopes that God would kill him? While also hiring an assassin to murder SpongeBob and Patrick, while he also brainwashed everybody in Bikini Bottom, including God, so that he could take over the world? But no, Burger Beard's plan is so much better. That was sarcasm, by the way. With all of that out of the way, we cut back to SpongeBob's public execution where he gets saved at the last second thanks to Mr. Krabs smelling Krabby Patties nearby. They follow the smell, which leads them near the surface world. As everybody's about to give up, Bubbles returns. And instead of doing literally anything interesting with him, he is instead used as a plot device to help turn out characters into CG gremlins. Now, normally, this would be just another part of the review where I explain to you the plot of the movie and maybe give you my opinion on it. However, it's impossible to do that when there's no plot here. Yeah. The first entire half of the live-action segment has almost no plot at all. It's just SpongeBob and the gang running around on the beach and getting caught up in all sorts of wacky shenanigans. But after all that is said and done, they run into Burger Beard, who just writes in the storybook and teleports them out into the middle of the ocean. It would seem like the end. However, Sandy still had one of the pages from the book that fell on her dome earlier in the movie, which means SpongeBob could write literally anything and it would come true. He could have wished for everything to go back to normal, for Burger Beard to lose the book and even get back the secret formula, but no. We gotta cash in on that Marvel Cinematic Universe while we can. Now, I don't think this was a bad idea on paper. SpongeBob had a lot of good superhero-themed episodes, and even an episode focused on them becoming superheroes.
The elastic waistband!
And while that was fun and meant to be a parody of the superhero genre, this just panders to the superhero genre. And do you know what's even funnier? The fact that the superhero segment of the movie only lasts 13 minutes. And that's funny, because the superhero segment was the most advertised part of the movie. Every commercial, every toy, every trailer, all focused heavily on the superhero part of this movie. The movie's even called Sponge Out of Water, yet they only get out of water for only 20 minutes. That's not even half of the movie! If that doesn't show how clear corporate manipulation of the movie is, then I don't know what would. Anyways, the next 13 minutes of the movie is your simple, generic superhero stuff. SpongeBob and the gang return with new nicknames and superhero poses. We have a showcasing power scene, a chase scene, a fight scene, and just about to lose scene, and a comeback victory scene. It's all just so generic and soulless. And the only part of the superhero stuff I liked was Plankton's superhero alter ego, which was named Plankton. I actually really like the idea of giving Plankton a very Hulk-like body. Giving him his own massive body would be an interesting take on his character, as now he can do what he could never do before. I was even hoping that we could get a fight scene with Plankton in the end, since the Burger Beard stuff was just bland and terrible. But no. Plankton becomes a good guy and returns the formula, learning the power of friendship and blah, blah, blah! There is also one part towards the end, though, that I really love.
I'll never leave this place. I mean, look at me. I'm a god.
This scene just makes me wish that Squidward would have become a twist villain towards the end. Anyways, they return home. Bikini Bottom celebrates the return of Krabby Patties, and it all ends with a happily ever after. And while the movie is over, there are two parts of the credits that really upsets me. One is that we find out that Burger Beard is the pirate from the painting in the SpongeBob theme song. The wasted potential on his character just makes me furious! And the second is that we see Bubbles return only to start rapping at some pelicans because he hates the SpongeBob theme song. What makes me mad here isn't the rap, though. It's the fact that we learn more about his character here in this short minute-long rap than we ever did in the actual movie. So much wasted potential. But I guess you could sum up the entire movie with that phrase. And that is SpongeBob, Sponge Out of Water. This movie had so many neat ideas put into it, but you can tell the corporate higher-ups made it a pain to work with. I do consider half of the movie to be amazing, but I can see why a lot of people wouldn't be fond of it, as the live-action segments are so bad that it nearly ruins the post-apocalyptic stuff. I think by far the most missed opportunity in the entire movie is them not bringing back the character Dennis from the first SpongeBob movie. He could have thrived in a post-apocalyptic environment, and it would have been so amazing to have him be the main villain of the movie instead of Burger Beard. As I said before, I don't think the superhero idea was bad on paper, but instead of making it a generic cash-in, they should have focused on making it a parody of the superhero genre. They've done it perfectly before, so I don't see why they couldn't do it again. But that all comes back around to the corporate higher-ups involving themselves in these kinds of projects. I guess that's why I want more people to be aware of this movie. Not for whether or not it's good or bad, but for it being a perfect example of creator versus corporation. A problem that consumers should be more aware of, and it's something we should be fighting against when the higher-ups decide to step in and make terrible changes to an otherwise great show. And I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Be sure to like and subscribe to help support future content on this channel, and be sure to check out the Nitro Reviews Patreon to get updates on future content for this channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.